how you present yourself at home, in your marriage, and with your kids. And maybe if we start along the same lines, you get frustrated when you give advice to someone and they don't take ownership of it, and they don't commit, and you got 3 kids. How does that work out?
So, very valid question. Totally different circumstances for me. I could see how they could be interpreted as being similar, but totally different for me.
Yes.
So, kind of like we talked earlier about learning from what other people did wrong. So I grew up, like I said, my parents got divorced when I was 2. Then my mom remarried a second gentleman. He was pretty chill. But the third guy, he was an alcoholic. They were married for 20-something years, very toxic environment. And so from that, I learned how not to raise a family. And so it's like, those are the things I don't want to expose my kids to on a consistent basis, are those toxic things. And that's why I bought the house to grow into, to provide that stability, because those are all the things that when I was a kid, I didn't know any different, and I don't have like this traumatic childhood. Well, my childhood was interesting because to me it wasn't traumatic. I learned from it, and I think it's like there's like a cliche story where it's something like there was 2 brothers, and one was an alcoholic and homeless, and the other was successful. And somebody went to the first brother and said, "Why are you an alcoholic?" And his response is, "Well, because my father was an alcoholic." And then they went to the successful gentleman and they said, "Why are you successful?" He says, "Well, because my father was an alcoholic." And that's very applicable to me, because I learned from that toxic environment of the alcoholic stepfather, and then I learned from the victim mindset that my mom had, and never looking for a path out of that, And so for me, it was like, okay, those are the things that I don't want. I don't want to move 2-3 times a year for my kids. I don't want financial instability. And so those are all the things that now I'm very intentional. By now, hopefully, like, intention is very clear with me, right? And so in all capacities of my life, be intentional with the direction of the company, be intentional with the opportunities I want to give my kids, be intentional for giving them a better childhood than I had, but without turning them into spoiled shitheads. And so it's like, how do I find all those balances of everything? And it's just all about, so it's all intentional. And so because of that, I can separate the circumstances of, like the example you gave of, how do you tell somebody something and they don't take action on it, versus how do you tell a 10-year-old and they don't take action on it? So, certainly in the back of my mind, it's like, come on, just do it. But then right aside with that is, he's a 10-year-old, so let him be a 10-year-old.
So how do you present it? Like, how do you find that balance that you're referring to?
I try to find the balance of encouraging independence without pushing my excessive intention. Like, I'm very intentional and strategic about things, and I understand the value and the benefits of that, but I also understand the weaknesses and the OCD and the constant thoughts and things like that. And so I try to show all the positive opportunities and characteristics from the things that I've learned, while just exposing them to it, not requiring it of them, but exposing them to things. Like, maybe an easy way to explain it is just like sports. So I don't require my kids to do any sports, but I expose them to all of them. So they, at least for a season, they all play basketball, they all play baseball, they play soccer. And then if they don't like it, they have to at least try it. But if they don't like it, then that's totally fine.